This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us this week on the latest edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, doing this podcast this week solo as Adam is away on vacation. Man, what a true statement when people say winning cures all in the National Football League. This week, got to take a look at the Detroit Lions 2-game winning streak. What has gone well? What hasn't? Can the Lions extend their current winning streak to 3 games? Got to take a look at that. And I do want to give a take in the second half of the podcast about the Pistons, as I see a young roster that simply still has not learned how to win. And I look at that basketball team. I'm a fan of all sports here in Detroit, but it's just really hard to focus in on the Pistons when every single night they take the court. They don't play good defensively. They don't play well. They don't make enough key winning plays late in order to secure victories. To see the record where it's at, yeah, there are potential benefits of the Detroit Pistons not being able to play well, but I will share my thoughts on the young roster and where potentially things could be leading with this team, because I don't know. I'm getting a sense online that many people, even though there are great players out there in next year's draft, you do want to have a sense a little bit that the Pistons are taking a step forward. So I want to check in with the Pistons in the second half of the podcast. But to start, the Detroit Lions, excellent win against the Chicago Bears. And now the vibe surrounding the rebuild, the vibe surrounding the team is just significantly better. And yeah, winning does cure all. When you go through 5 consecutive weeks of losing, it's just really a down time for everybody involved. The questions tend to get the same. The negativity permeates through the Allen Park practice facility. The talk then was shifting a little bit regarding the dynamic between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Could this regime be a flop already? Is Dan Campbell the right guy for the job? And that kind of talk was going on and on. After the 3rd consecutive loss, you start really wondering what's going on here. And then week 3, 4, 5, that's really tough. So to get back-to-back victories, and not only 2 consecutive wins, but to get those wins in the division has really turned the tide in Dan Campbell's favor and really potentially negated some of the talk regarding the rebuild. And I think it's been a good thing for the Detroit Lions to get themselves and to put themselves in a position to win games. And that's what it's about, is that, yes, you can still rebuild. And that's what the likes of NFL analysts like Brian Baldinger, who was gracious enough to give us a few minutes of his time for an interview. He said, yeah, a team can rebuild. A team can put out a roster full of young players. But at the same time, there has to be some indication that at some point that collection of talent can play 60 minutes and eventually win games more often than not. And you guys got to remember, too, the heat was justified. The Lions were not a 1-win football team based on the collection of talent that you had. You have a bunch of first-round picks. You have a bunch of second-round picks that are on that roster that have talent. So there needed to be some indication that the team could put it together. And yeah, part of my thought, too, is that the Lions at the right time went up against 2 opponents that also were struggling in the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. I mean, boy, did the Packers and Bears make a lot of mistakes against the Lions. You had Rodgers throwing multiple interceptions. You had the Chicago Bears take a significant amount of penalties. And guys, remember that the game late was really fascinating in that Jared Goff had tossed an interception to the Bears only to have that play negated. So that could have been a disastrous moment for Goff and the Lions. But the Bears continuously, because of the fact that they were undisciplined, they were struggling mightily throughout the entire contest. So I was very impressed with the Detroit Lions and their ability to not only win those games, but to play cleaner football, to not make as many mistakes as their opponents. And you just look back to the Bears game. What a resilient football team. Remember, the Lions were down 2 scores on the road against Chicago, and many people potentially were thinking, uh-oh, here we go. Justin Fields was able to take advantage of a lot of things, just a player that features all the skills that Lions fans want in their quarterback, just being mobile, having the ability to extend plays, being a one-man show, being that the Bears on defense have let go of two of their premier talented players and they moved on. And Justin Fields was just significantly a big time force and a focal point of that offense. And I think a lot of people here in Detroit start to look at that and say, oh boy, wouldn't that be nice to have a player that's simply able to come in and overcome any obstacle and play at a high level. Justin Fields, I think many people walked away from that Bears game, Lions fans, and said, oh boy, luckily to get the win, but Justin Fields could be a significant problem over the next several seasons for the Lions. And it'll be interesting to see how he progresses in his NFL career. But the Lions were resilient. They didn't let a 2-touchdown deficit impact their play. They still went about their business. They still went to pressure Justin Fields, and he cracked. And Aiden Hutchinson holding his edge, playing at a high level, really allowed and forced Justin Fields to make an errant throw, which eventually landed up in the hands of Jeff Okudah. Didn't have to do much. The ball just came right to him. Hey, but you're in the right position. Boom. Interception. Big, huge momentum swing. And it was just a great play for the Detroit Lions. And so now they sit with the record of 3-6, and things are so much better. You can talk about things related to scheme, things related to fine-tuning execution in regards to pressuring the quarterback, linebacker play, tidying up the mistakes that were made on certain plays, and walking away with the victory. Just changed the tide of the season. 3 wins, 3-6, with an opportunity now to win 3 in a row, going on the road against the New York Giants. And I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see the matchup, and I'll talk about what I think is going to happen. But I think that now what winning does for a football team, it just takes away the edge. It takes away a lot of the negativity that people had. You see among the fan base a significant amount of hope still that Dan Campbell can turn things around with this young roster. You still get the sense that, yeah, people were questioning Dan Campbell and his coaching and his decision making. And guys, Dan Campbell adjusted. He adapted. What did he do? The Lions marched down the field in one of their early offensive drives. It's a 4th down late in the red zone. Did they go for it? No. Dan Campbell sent the field goal team out there to take the points. And that was a change. That was an adjustment that Dan Campbell made. Now, he was asked by one of the reporters at his Monday press conference this week, hey, what's up with the change? What happened? Why in the past had you been a little bit more aggressive, going for it repeatedly, and this time you decided to take the points? And his answer was, I think, a little bit of coach speak, a little bit of trying to punt, but he just told reporters that I just felt like it. I felt like that was the right move. And while I get that maybe he doesn't want to reveal and tip his hand regarding his decisions a lot of times, I just think that was just the right move. It was nice to see Dan Campbell adapt a little bit and recognize that executing on 4th down and going for it just for the sake of going for it is not the right play. You have to have so many things go right on a 4th down to make it go the way that you want. You have to have the right play call. You have to hope the defense doesn't take advantage of you. And then you have to execute, which has just been a struggle as of late, which has been surprising because the team to start the year just was executing on 4th down at a high clip. But once he started to see the tide turning in regards to short down and distance execution, he didn't back away. He just kept going for it, and even going for it in weird positions with down and distance on the Lions side of the field, giving the opponent a shorter field. So for Dan Campbell to recognize that, hey, I have to turn things around. I got to make better choices. I have to be able to step back, understand that, okay, I have a young team, and being aggressive at certain times is worth a shot. But early in games, when you have an opportunity to put points on the board, you put points on the board. And I think that very decision right there signaled to people, okay, Dan Campbell is learning that he might not just be reckless and might not just be a coach that is just so stubborn that he's just going to do it just for the sake of going for it on fourth down, that there has to be effective reasons why you go out there and you do it. So you start off well, and you have a running game now that's led by Jamal Williams that I think what gives Dan Campbell comfort, and you get a nice sense of what a player like Jamal Williams can bring to a team. Now, is he the best running back in the National Football League? No. Does he have some deficits in his game? Yeah. But what Dan Campbell is looking for is a team full of players like Jamal Williams, where when he steps foot on the field, it's going to give you max effort, and he's going to try hard, and he's going to be available. So what you get in a player of Jamal Williams' caliber, and to take advantage of it, to have the opportunity to run the football and secure first downs really opens things up for the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown, who just had a great game. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamal Williams carrying that offense has really, really allowed this team to hang in there against their foes as of late. And boy, when Amon-Ra St. Brown went down with that high ankle sprain, you could see the challenge that it was going to pose to the Lions, because man, he can just scheme himself open. He has great route running. He has the ability to recognize when to adapt routes and fit it to what the defense is doing. And there's quality. There's a connection, a strong connection between a wide receiver and his quarterback when they make it look easy. They have such a good connection that it bodes well for the offense moving forward with Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown for the second half of the season. And Jamal Williams, what better way to embody what the Lions were looking for? What did we sit here screaming on this podcast about? I screamed it, I think, on an appearance on Woodward Sports. It's in previous games, you have a 4th and 1 and you're in a 4 wide set and trying to throw the football and to have these long developing plays. When you just hand the ball off to Jamal Williams, trust your offensive line and go for it. So it was 3rd down. And so the Lions have a 1-point lead and they have the football. So it's a great opportunity now to close out the game. And it's a great situation in which your defense held, you get the football back, and the Bears had momentum, which was crazy in that they come down and they have this opportunity, and the Lions are winning 31-30 and they have the football. So the Lions have this opportunity to close out the game, not give the ball back. How many times have we seen it where the Lions have the football and something fluky happens? Boy, could you imagine if what happened to the Buffalo Bills happened to the Lions, where there's a mishap or there's a turnover or the Bears get that one opportunity late, trailing by 1, and they go down the field and take the lead and deliver another heartbreaking loss to the Lions? That would have been disastrous. So you have the Lions offense, and what do? They pound the rock. They understand the strength of the team, and Jamal Williams on that 3rd down, and I believe 7 or 8, secures the first down with a run that embodies everything that the Lions are looking to accomplish. In that, it's a powerful run. He draws contact, I think 5-6 yards into his run, and he takes the defenders, 2 defenders with him, to fall forward for another couple yards, secure the victory formation. And then you saw the relief. You saw the joy that the Lions coaching staff, Dan Campbell, who was bushwhacking his way down towards Aaron Glenn, celebrating a hard-fought victory. And it was good to see. Aaron Glenn is excitable, obviously, with Jeff Okudah's interception, the play of the defense, securing, obviously, the last wrap-up there with Justin Fields. It was great. It was nice to see the opportunity there that the Lions had in making plays. And boy, just that play where Dan Miller's epic call comes to fruition and he's just screaming, get down, Justin Fields. You could sense the frustration and the fan reaction that Dan Miller had, which is why it's gone viral online, because that's what everybody that was sitting down in their seat, in their chair, was thinking, was get that quarterback down. My goodness, because the Lions had him and then they didn't, and they had him, and then they didn't. And Julian Okwara told me, man, that, it's just Justin Fields is so strong, and Julian is a big man himself. He has the opportunity to get you down, but he needed to, in that play, if you look at it, he wraps up Justin Fields, but he escapes. And then Julian Okwara gets back up and continues to move his feet and gets back toward the quarterback. And that's what you got to do. You got to pursue. You got to stay in your lane. And you have to keep your feet moving toward the quarterback in order to effectively tackle. So, that was a nail biter. And I think a lot of people probably, if you had pulled them live at the time, would have thought that the Bears were going to come back in some way or somehow. It's in their building. It's at Soldier Field. You have a Lions team that's struggling to learn to win. And now you have Justin Fields with an opportunity late. But boy, you never know when these kickers, man, how they can impact the game. A missed extra point. The game would have been tied, guys. The game would have gone to overtime had Santos not missed the extra point. And boy, how costly was that for the Chicago Bears? But that's their problem. They got to worry about their rebuild here in Detroit. Now, the Lions are in preparation for the New York Giants. And it's a game that many people on the surface, obviously, when you see a 7-2 New York Giants football team, you take a step back and you go, boy, the Lions might not have a realistic chance of going to MetLife Stadium and winning the game. Well, I disagree. I completely wholeheartedly disagree with that notion. I think this is a game the Lions can win. And maybe these words will come back to haunt me, I think the Lions can go to MetLife and win the game, and maybe even win it handily. And here's how. The Giants are a team that have been built, obviously now, and are taking advantage of a quality head coach in Brian Daboll, who's working with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and is maximizing the talent that's on the roster. They're using a quality coaching staff to handle their business. Is their offense really that potent? No. Kenny Galladay, former Detroit Lion, Brad Holmes and the organization had an opportunity to keep him around with a big extension. They decided not to. One of the early decisions the regime made was to just move on, not offer him a huge contract, no franchise tag. Just let him go. Let him sign a huge deal with the Giants, and then you get a compensatory pick, which is always a plus. So the Detroit Lions make a quality decision. He goes over there and has struggled. The drops. I mean, if you go watch the Giants last game, when he drops the football, the fans just lit him up. The New York crowd, the New York fan base is not fond of what Kenny Galladay has brought to the table. And he's been in and out of the lineup, has embodied really some things that NFL teams don't like in terms of players that earn big money and then their play drops way off. So now you have this Giants team and they're playing gritty. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They win a lot of games late and they execute in the red zone. So for the Lions, this is going to be an opportunity to turn things around, to go back on the road and to go mano a mano, strength versus strength. And I'm really curious to see if the Lions rushing attack can penetrate the Giants defense, because, Don Wink Martindale, great defensive coach, comes over. And that's where maybe Brian Daboll had a leg up on Dan Campbell, just in terms of experience. You have Brian Daboll, obviously, who's an offensive wizard, tasked with bringing in Josh Allen with the Bills when he was there and working with the offense. And boom, now he's an offensive wizard, and Josh Allen has emerged into being one of the top NFL quarterbacks. So now you're a new head coach, Brian Daboll. What do you do on the defense? He didn't bring in a coach that from the Bills that had no experience, went out and had an opportunity to work with Don Wink Martindale. And boy, has that paid off in that, you have an opportunity now with Kayvon Thibodeau learning the ropes. You have a young defense that wants to set the stage and handle their business. So you look at it, and Dan Campbell went a little bit of a different route in that Aaron Glenn didn't have that much experience as a coordinator and is still learning the ropes. But his ceiling, Aaron Glenn, now potentially, if he can continue to work with the secondary, if he can put together a couple of weeks back-to-back of quality play, you're starting to see the staples of an Aaron Glenn defense. They're aggressive. They want to be physical. They want to hit. and they want to have an opportunity to force turnovers on the defensive side of the football. And boy, have they been able to do it. So you look at it and I say, this game right here is a chance for the Lions. If they can get out early to a lead and put the pressure on the Giants, they can win by 7 to 10 points. The Lions don't have to play in a tough game this week. If Amon-Ra St. Brown plays well, Jamal Williams, Jared Goff gets back a little bit, maybe potentially Josh Reynolds gets back, but doesn't look like it based on the early trends this week. Maybe the opportunity for the Lions can come again to win 3 straight. Look, guys, when you're in a close game, it's just a couple things that have to go your way. If the Lions can play from ahead, if they can force the Giants into some mistakes, Daniel Jones is not a world beater. You have to believe at this point in their careers, Jared Goff is just maybe a fraction better than Daniel Jones. And I believe that, just like everybody's been saying, the key factor in this contest is going to be, can Saquon Barkley be contained? Because if you can contain him, if the defensive line can continue to get those push with Kaminsky and Pascal and Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil, if you can continue to stack the box and not let him run wild, you have a chance to bog down the Giants defense and walk away with the victory. But boy, online, all of you have been messaging me at Detroit Podcast. All Lions put out a story early on Wednesday morning saying that, early Thursday morning, saying that, hey, Kenny Galladay was a great decision to let him leave. And immediately the first handful of messages that came through the inbox were, hey, don't count your eggs before they're hatched. Kenny Galladay could easily have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it was great because all of you kept using the same stat, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. All of you have a little bit of fear of like, hey, look out. Could Kenny Galladay come back and bite the Lions in his one game that he plays well? That would be something. That would be an SOL moment. If the factor that beats you is Kenny Galladay with just a little bit of motivation outperforming Jeff Okudah and Amani Oruwariye, that would be something. Jerry Jacobs getting a little bit more of a role. Amani Oruwariye hasn't seen the field, but a handful of snaps. So we'll see if that changes this week against the Giants. But my official prediction is the Lions 23 and the Giants 20. 23-20 is what I think is going to happen. It's going to be a tight game, but I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if it's a blowout. I would not be surprised. So let's just take advantage this week of a good week of Lions football, positivity. We can talk about good things, not having to worry about the draft, not having to worry about mock drafts. It's an opportunity to take a serious, fun look at the Lions, and hopefully they can continue their winning ways because, yeah, winning breeds confidence. And it makes it so much more fun to be out at the Allen Park practice facility. So make sure you stay with All Lions and Detroit Sports Podcast for all your Lions coverage. Visit us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Visit All Lions Daily at si.com/NFL/Lions, where we feature highlights, analysis, videos, exclusive NFL content that not many local sites are able to feature. So make sure when you're checking out Lions coverage, stop in with Fan Nation All Lions and a great partnership with SI.com, and the ability to cover the Detroit Lions on a daily basis has been rewarding and an opportunity for everyone to really take a close look at what's going on. An up close look. We're there at Allen Park very much I'm there covering the team every single day from the practice facility. And a special shout out this week to friends at Woodward Sports. They had me on twice this week to break down the Lions. First with a good friend, the Morning Woodward Show, Adam Baydoun and Jeff Iafrady. Good fellas looking to make a name in Detroit sports. And then always enjoy catching up with Stick and Braylon Edwards and Maz. Good fellas over there at Woodward Sports. It's always fun to break down football. I always appreciate that they give me a call and have the opportunity to give my opinions on the Lions, the draft, where they think the Lions should go. So check them out this week. John McAroon appeared on Woodward Sports with a couple of different appearances. All right. With my last 5 or 6 minutes here on this week's episode of Doc and Jock, have to express concern. Now, full disclosure, since Dwane Casey's been the coach, I just can't stomach multiple Detroit Pistons games back to back to back. So obviously the first part of this year with a new team, with, Beef Stew, with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Duran, I'm interested obviously in the young development of this roster. But, you sit and you watch these games. Okay. So I watched like the first 5 games exclusively, and you're like, oh, oh my goodness, the defense has not gotten really any better. The perimeter defense is terrible. You look at the size underneath, and it might not be where it needs to be to contain what these opponents are able to do on the inside. And you realize, okay, the Pistons defense is not going to take a step forward really in any capacity. It's going to be tough for them to get better at all. And now Cade Cunningham's hurt. You're not seeing the shooting that you need to consistently, and you're not seeing the key turnovers late. You're not seeing the defense step up. You're not seeing the Pistons being able to force their opponent into, making mistakes. You're starting to see a little bit over the course of the last few games, the Pistons being really reactive in the fourth quarter, where they don't enable their will to win games. So you ask yourself, is this a young team that knows how to win? Do they have enough talent? Are the shot selections at the right time being done well? Is the rotation being set properly? And I look at all those questions, and I have a lot more questions than I do have answers. So for me, I've been of the opinion it's sports, and maybe it's wrong. And I'm open to, people saying, hey, John, you're too reactive. You're one of those people that just wants to fire everybody. But all I can do is lay out my record. Jeff Blashill said fire him 3 years ago. He's gone. What do you know? Matt Patricia, first year, you go, uh-oh, this isn't looking right. Not going to work. He's gone. Brad Ausmus, that's not going to work. He's gone. Mentioned trades that should have been made in terms of selling players with the Tigers. And obviously, you don't, have the opportunity to trade Michael Fulmer at his peak. Mistake. So while I may have some big misses potentially on Jeff Okudah, being that I was tough on cornerbacks, but bottom line, my radar's up on Dwane Casey. I don't have faith that this is the guy that's going to net any type of improvement. Okay, the team offensively is getting a slightly better. Killian Hayes put together a couple quality performances. But when I look at it from a 360-degree view from the top, not getting into the nitty-gritty of the Pistons, I don't have confidence that Dwane Casey is the guy. I've waited now for 2 years for Troy Weaver to get his guy, because Troy Weaver came in, and Dwane Casey was already sitting in the chair. That just doesn't typically work. So for someone like me, I'm of the opinion, just move on, get somebody else, and the team will perform, at least get a spark defensively, somebody that has a keen sense of executing on defense. What is the Pistons' defensive identity other than allowing points? The Pistons' defensive identity is show up on the court and give up 120 points. That's their identity. For the course of 3 seasons, you don't see any progress. You don't see any philosophy that indicates that the Pistons are going to have success. And now some people are saying this is good because you're going to potentially have the opportunity to get a French legend in the draft that everybody's talking about. But you got to remember, guys, there's still a small chance that the ping pong balls don't fall your way. How long are the Pistons going to tank for? Because every other team now is starting to potentially turn the corner. The Tigers are at the very beginning of their second rebuild, but they're adding pieces with people that a lot of people are confident in. Steve Yzerman has turned the corner a little bit, brought in his coach. Dan Campbell now is working with Brad Holmes moving forward there. That's yet to be determined if Dan Campbell will actually finish out with Brad Holmes, because they Dan Campbell was hired first. So we'll see if that connection stays strong. But on the Pistons side, my doubts are raised. I just don't have confidence that Dwane Casey can be effective as a leader of the Detroit Pistons. And I just can't. And then the other factor that's got my alarm raised is, and I tend to be, like I said, I tend to be overcritical, but Cade Cunningham to me hasn't taken the biggest second-year jump that I would have liked at this point in his career. And I think if Cade Cunningham could come back from injury a little bit stronger, a little bit of an opportunity now to pick and choose his shot selection, delegate less and score more, take ownership of the position that he's in, now you're going to have an opportunity to handle business. And you just have to hope for the continued development of Beef Stew and the likes of Sadiq Bey and Ivy. If those guys, they're going to lead the team. And right now, it just hasn't been to the level where you have any sort of confidence that the Pistons can win. And so that's where I'm at with it. My alarms are raised. I'm thinking that this team could instantly improve. if you've improved and upgrade at the coaching position. Dwane Casey is just not the guy. He will not be the coach of the Pistons when they eventually turn it around. My time is up. Thank you for these 30 minutes. I appreciate everybody for taking the time to listen to the Doc and Jock podcast. I always appreciate coming in and having the opportunity to break down Detroit sports. You guys have been a great influence over the last 10 years. We're reaching episode 500 of weekly Doc and Jock podcast. Just look around. Nobody is, because if you do it properly, you number your podcast. Nobody locally is at 480 in regards to consecutive weekly podcasts. And that's because of your support. Anywhere that you can find podcasts, type in Detroit Sports Podcast and our content will find you. Podcasting time has now come to a close. I'm the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you for downloading the latest edition of Doc and Jock. I'm so grateful to be able to podcast and share thoughts on Detroit sports with everybody out there. And that's really a testament to the great support of the best fans in America. And that's Detroit sports fans. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to checking in with Adam next week.